Sona Khan is a former judge and an advocate appearing before the Indian Supreme Court. She is a distinguished legal scholar of Islamic jurisprudence and is very committed to the advocacy of women's legal rights. It's a pleasure to meet with you, Sona. The Indian Constitution has been followed by many countries in Asia and Africa. It's been an inspiration as a social charter. But do you think that it has done much to advance the rights of women?
You know, all the rights of individual rights and collective rights flow for Indian population from the Constitution. Development of individual rights particularly is a blessing of Indian Constitution, because before that a person was a part of a community, part of a village, part of a family, part of a defined setup of population. You can give it any name. But as an individual, for centuries, the people did not have any rights. They had obligations as individuals, like in the caste system, or like as a head of a state, you have an obligation towards your subjects. But as a individual, you did not have the rights. All the rights drew from the setup that you belong to. So one of the blessings of Indian Constitution is to recognize individual, a citizen, as a person and grant him or her the rights of equality, which has two parts and very important, right? Equality before law and equal protection of law. And this second part, the equal protection of law, has facilitated the interpretation of the rights of women in a manner that women are seen not as daughters, not as wives, not as mothers, but as individual citizens of the state. And a lot has to be said about these in granting of individual rights, that women participated, Indian women participated in the freedom struggle as equals. So therefore, there was no way that the Indian Constitution could not recognize them as individuals.
What more can be done to mobilize the Constitution to advance women's social rights?
It was the question of a right to life and to live with dignity. In the absence of family or the husband, abdicating his responsibility to maintain a woman after divorce. Now things are changing and improving a little. The state had no obligation of social security towards an individual. So individual was dependent upon the family. And if the family abdicates the responsibility, where is this person to go? And what happens to the right of life and right to life to live with dignity? So that was a big question. So all those Indians who have chosen to live under the Indian Constitution, if they have to be given the right to life, then somebody has to make sure that the life is granted to the fullest. And that was a main question, apart from many other questions that Shahbano case brought in. But this was a very important element involved.
The Indian Constitution tries to balance many competing claims. The competing claims of backward castes, scheduled tribes, scheduled castes. It also guarantees a recognition of legal pluralism. In all this, do the women's claims get marginalized?
This is a very important question, and I think in the last 60 years, Indian Supreme Court has interpreted the rights of women in many ways, where the woman, though at the mercy of community, whether you are Hindu, Muslim, Christian, doesn't matter, you are still in many ways at the mercy of your community, to recognize your rights as an individual, as a person. But the Supreme Court has been very careful to strike a balance, because if you remove the community, the people from their customary and traditional rights, it takes a long time for the state to invest in education, in awareness, in preparing people to receive those rights with open arms and accept them. Otherwise, these rights can tend to destabilize the communities without understanding what they're all about. So the Supreme Court has struck very good balance And I am very happy to say that some of the landmark judgments, for example, the sexual harassment, Vishakha case, Shahbano, judgment is an excellent piece of legislation. Pluralism. Vishakha case, probably you know, is a case we're dealing with the right of women of protection at work from sexual harassment. Then there are many other cases where the rights of women have been recognized. But of course, there are many other cases where still a long way has to be done.
A pillar of the Indian Constitution is secularism. Can you explain to me what this exactly means in the Indian context?
The secularism as understood in the subcontinent is very different than it is understood in the Western society. In Western society, the state is removed entirely from religion. And absence of religion in state is secularism. But in India, it is presence of all religion with equality is secularism. The state doesn't have a religion, but respects, accommodates, provides equal space to all religions. And that is an Indian secularism.
How does the Indian Constitution balance its recognition of secularism along with legal and religious pluralism?
The legal rights, the way Indian Constitution describes the rights of protection of women. For example, in Article 51A of the Constitution, specifically talks of respect for women. Anything derogatory, it's an obligation of every citizen to respect women. And anything which is derogatory against the interest of women or images of women cannot be accepted. So as we go along in the society, the Indian Constitution has always chipped in. Wherever the legislation seemed confused or public opinion seemed confused, the Constitution has always been throwing a bright light for people to follow a path.
But don't you think that the Constitution is very subject to judicial interpretation, and sometimes they go down conflicting paths? I mean, judges overturn decisions of previous courts, and sometimes you have a very rich but slightly confusing jurisprudence. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't say confusing, but I would say yes, conflicting judgments. You see, judges are also human beings. They are entitled to opinion at a given time. But revising those opinions at a later stage is also a part of all jurisprudence. The purpose of law is to serve the society at a given time and provide a kind of a balance between the understanding of the law and the governance and what the law is. Law is rigid and firm, stands there. The basic principle is that nobody should be hurt, nobody should be harmed, and the governance should seem, the justice should be seen to have been done. That's an important factor. Justice not done, but seem to have been done. Dispensing justice with a firm hand is a part of governance. And there, sometimes, of course, we have problems, but that is because of the political elements involved in the whole process of administration of justice. But otherwise, as the Constitution is concerned, I think it has withstood all kinds of storms. And I am very, very proud to say that it is an excellent piece of legislation.
The Constitution of India and even its democracy was tested in 1975 when an emergency was declared. Do you think a similar phenomenon could ever take place in India?
That was a very extraordinary phase, I must say, that India was going through. But I must tell you, the 1975 experience has tremendous impact today. No government will be able to survive if they do not respect the Constitution. There have been efforts to change the basic character of the Constitution. For example, secularism was under threat couple of years ago. Seemed not under threat really, but seemed to be under threat. But no, it couldn't be done. The way Indian Constitution can be amended, there are several natures of amendments, but you need 2/3 majority in the parliament and you need 2/3 majority in the state legislatures also, which is very difficult for anyone to have. And alluding to the emergency period, that was extraordinary, as I said, but at the same time, it has been a good experience because you get matured. When you make mistakes, you get matured. You learn from your mistakes.
You have spoken to the extraordinarily difficult amending procedure that the Indian Constitution has, and that I think is very good because constitutions should be amended with care and forethought. But what happens if you find that the Constitution is out of touch with the present reality? Society is evolved. Today, India is a powerful industrial country. It's not the agrarian society it was at the time of independence and framing of the Constitution. The context changes, the pressures are different. Do you think constitutions can be too rigid and then not serve society very well if they cannot be amended?
Well, this is it. This is what you have really nailed. The Indian Constitution has an inbuilt mechanism to respond to various challenges, and liberalization of Indian economy is one of them. But if you look at the common minimum program of the present government, in spite of liberalization, supports the basic concept of socialistic pattern of society, which is the mandate in the preamble of the Constitution. So I feel that the Indian Constitution, in spite of an amending process which may not be very flexible, which is good, it has served us well, but at the same time has a tremendous space to respond to various challenges with the changing economy, changing the pressures of globalization. I still feel that there is a room for every individual to use the instrument of Constitution and seek redress in case he or she feels hurt by the pressures of globalization. And it has been done. For example, recently the agitation of farmers where the lands were being taken away or the land use was being redefined for industrial growth and purposes has had its own impact, and the public opinion generated throws light for changing policies. The special economic zones being built up to take away the farmers' land, changing the land use from agrarian use to industrial use, has its own toll, and all the political leadership, wherever these states, land is a state subject, so each state has to respond to these challenges in their own way. They have need to provide employment. They have need to have economic growth. So they are left to strike a balance with their people living in that state. And I think they are doing marvelously a good job. It will take time, but we will strike a balance for sure.
The Indian Constitution prided itself for being a social charter that would make caste discrimination illegal and would in fact make caste irrelevant over time. But today, caste is actually a mobilizing factor. It's stronger than ever in the society. Do you see this as a failure of the Indian Constitution or a weakness in it?
No, I don't see it as a failure or weakness of the Constitution. I see it as a failure of political leadership. Don't blame the Constitution for it, please. The Constitution has a responsibility to deliver the rights of people to the extent that there should be no discrimination based upon caste, color, creed, and gender. The Constitution has responsibility to make sure that equal opportunities are granted. These people who had suffered discrimination at the behest of a social mechanism called caste system were deprived of opportunities of equality. To give them a helping hand to come to that level, to be able to receive, to generate potential for them to receive equality is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Though, of course, it has a vested interest of established forces, but that has to be done. We are a very large country with diversified population, diversified religion. So there are pressures. But at the same time, I feel the new forces of globalization will render caste and religion negative aspect of it irrelevant, because people will insist on delivery of rights in terms of constitution. And there I see political leadership which is unable to deliver will fail, will never be re-elected. Religious domination of forces which is depriving people or replacing people's need for development will also have to wither away gradually. Though don't confuse matter of faith with delivery. These are two entirely different things. Religion is a matter of faith. That will always stay in India. But the forces which tend to change the faith and take them into path of replacement for delivery of rights, that's changing. It will change. So you will find new concepts, new philosophies, new ideologies emerging. And there, India's pluralism will be saluted and would become a role model in the rest of the world, which is stuck with singular paradigm to draw inspirations from.
Is there scope for including people and communities more in making and reviewing constitutions so that they match contemporary needs? Because right now, it's amending a constitution, making a constitution is seen as an act for a legislature. But do you think that there is more scope for drawing the public and communities into this process? And how can it be done in a country like India?
There is already a process of reorganization or development of regionalism, which was started with Rajiv Gandhi's period as a Prime Minister, 93, 94, 73rd and 74th Amendment of the Constitution, which grants Panchayati Raj facilities at the village level and the block level, and the situation of women is tremendously prominent. The 33.3% seats have to be reserved in every such elected bodies for women to be elected. And this process of regionalism has made central leadership to be always on its toes to respond to their aspirations and hopes. Therefore, as a result of that rise in regionalism, you will find that new needs in terms of consumerism, in terms of development, in terms of economic growth are emerging. And these needs are also responding to economic growth in various ways. The process of globalization, it has tremendously influenced the lives of people. For example, in the IT industry now, the mobility of people is so vast and so great. Now the boundaries in which their domicile was defined is changing. And same is the case with the agricultural workers and the construction workers, the workers which are involved with growth. Wherever there's a demand, they are going. So the whole scenario of federalism also will go a tremendous change. And union government cannot escape influences from all this. So healthcare would need to be defined. So the development of Panchayati Raj institutions has been a tremendous source of also empowerment of the people at the ground level. And the people, if they need a particular law, a particular legal change, they will voice their opinion. And these Panchayati Raj institutions have been vested with some legislative and some judicial powers. Not in all matters, but some matters. And therefore, for example, if somebody needs a canal, a water to be diverted in a particular village, of course, they would have to articulate their need. It will be done in the prescribed legal manner, but it is possible to do that. If you need a certain road and you need a school, if you need a primary healthcare center, it all will fit in. And that also is a part of law-making devices, because not only the parliament and state legislatures will pass the laws, but these local bodies also have some potential. Also, the courts at the lower level and at the higher level at the state level is a high court, which by passing judgments, interpreting the existing rules and regulations and the laws, also can change the legislative process to some extent.
So you really point to an India where there's a lot of churning and movement of population and changes where people are able to pressure government to respond. They don't have to depend entirely on the constitution. There's a second and third tier of government that has now become more accessible to them.
All these rights, all these rules, regulations, all this potential flows from the constitution. It cannot be outside the ambit of the constitution.
What do you think are the greatest achievements of the Indian constitution and India's democracy?
To be able to deliver equality, freedom of speech and expression, to be able to show Indian political leadership, to be alive and alert towards their responsibilities, and the greatest of them all, the power to choose your government.
What do you see as the challenges for India's constitution in the years to come and India's democracy?
The biggest challenge is whether the parliament is supreme or the judiciary is supreme. And that is a challenge. Though, in my opinion, my personal humble opinion, is the constitution which is supreme, because India has a written constitution. British parliamentary system, which we have followed, they don't have a written constitution. And it's a parliament which is supreme. But in the case of India, it's a constitution which is supreme. So both judiciary and the parliament will have to work within the specified areas defined by the constitution.
How can a constitution become a living reality to ordinary people and not simply a tool of reference for judges and lawyers and parliamentarians? Do you think that today the Constitution of India is a little removed from ordinary people's expectations or understanding?
The fact that in the remotest areas where there is no railway, there is no road, but people do know they have a right to vote. And that vote is valuable. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was thrown out of power after having served, her party having served for a very, very long time after independence, 5 years. They came back again. And today, a poorest of all poor people may not be educated, but knows that he or she has a right in the process of decision making somehow, which ultimately makes him or her a live citizen participating in every part of the governmental process. It's a different thing that sometimes these people feel disappointed because their aspirations, their hopes are not being answered. But the fact they can do it again within a specified period is a great achievement. India is a living, vibrant democracy, functional democracy. And forgive me for bragging, but if you see the neighborhood, Pakistan has no democracy. Bangladesh is theoretical. Nepal, you know what is happening. It's churning, it's changing. The democratic process is being installed. Sri Lanka is still in turmoil. Of course, they have democracy, but then, they have limitations. Burma will take a long time. Afghanistan is in turmoil, though India is helping Afghanistan to have a parliament and have a kind of a democratic process which would be conducive for their objectives as an independent sovereign state to achieve. So I feel very strongly that Indian constitution has been a source of great inspiration for the neighborhood. The present turmoil in Pakistan, struggle for democratic forces to be well established, is an indication both these countries came together in 1947 in the month of August to charter out their independence and as two independent sovereign states, one has a long way to catch up with India, and India has gone far ahead in showing that what democracy can do to you. So I think this is already something for us and for the rest of the world where democratic forces have yet to be established.
Sona Khan, thank you very much. It has been very, very inspirational talking to you.